Elden Ring, is it worth playing? Spoiler alert, it's not, in a way at least. Now, before everyone that loves Elden Ring collectively bans me from the internet, please watch this video to the end. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Pixelated Quest and today we'll be playing Elden Ring and figuring out if it lives up to the hype. Elden Ring is a Souls-like open-world dark fantasy RPG game which was released in February 2022 by From Software and published by Bandai. With sales exceeding 20 million copies, Elden Ring is easily From Software's most successful game, surpassing even the Dark Souls series, Demon's Souls, Sekiro, and Bloodborne. In a recent IGN interview, Miyazaki, the chief developer, mentioned the possibility of Elden Ring 2, or additional DLCs following the release of Shadow of the Entry. So, this is a game that I have not played yet, but I was hyped for it ever since it was released. However, I had reservations, and you will soon understand why. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you will see that I'm not really into the dark fantasy / Souls-like genre. Still, Elden Ring caught my attention even on its release date. And now, especially with an overall very positive review score and a total of nearly 581,000 reviews, of which 92% are positive reviews, on the day of this recording. At the time of this recording, there are currently 82,422 players in the game, with a 24-hour peak of almost 109,000 concurrent players. However, looking at the history chart, the player count has gradually decreased from an all-time peak of almost a million concurrent players on March 5, 2022, a week after its initial release. This decline is typical for a game post-release, as initial hype and marketing efforts settle and players gradually test and play the game at their own pace. My experience somewhat mirrored this trend. I purchased the game during the last Christmas sale for around $36, a friendlier price compared to its regular $60 price tag. Despite the hype and the positive reviews, the game sat in my Steam library until now, waiting for me to give it the undivided attention it seemingly deserved. So I thought, at least. Last Friday evening, with the entire weekend ahead of me, with no chores in sight or any other obligations, it was time. I installed the game with the expectation of enjoying what I assumed to be an unbelievable experience such as RDR2 or AC Valhalla. After solid 4 hours into the game, I stopped, cutting short the agony I was enduring, and promptly uninstalled the game. So, what happened? Now, there are a few things you need to understand. Firstly, I am not saying that Elden Ring is a bad game. As mentioned earlier, this marks my very first encounter with Elden Ring and any Souls-like game genre. I have never played anything similar to Elden Ring before. Before delving into the negative aspect of my experience, let's acknowledge the positive facts of this game. Firstly, the graphics are absolutely gorgeous and mesmerizing. With a halfway decent computer, you can truly appreciate the commitment to detail that the developers have poured into Elden Ring. Additionally, the world design, although I may never experience 99% of it, is generally fantastic. However, this is where the positive aspects of the game end for me. Being a complete newcomer to the Souls-like genre and considering that I never played Dark Souls or Bloodborne, I found the introduction and the story setup, also known as lore, to be completely insufficient and absolutely uninteresting. At this point, I have no idea what the game is about, what my mission is, where I'm going, or what I'm supposed to do. The setup is overwhelming and unintriguing for newcomers without any prior introduction to this world. In the few hours I played, I found myself wandering around a fantasy world that seemed spaced out without clear reference points on what I'm supposed to do. The battle mechanics in the game felt slow and heavy in terms of character movement, unlike the more direct and fast-slashing attacks in like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Something I found absolutely irritating were the messages from other players scattered around on the ground in the form of what I can only assume are runes. I understand their purpose, but in some areas there were around 4 or 5 of these messages all saying identical things such as "strong enemy ahead." This completely destroyed the immersion for me. However, I did appreciate the fact that if you die, you lose everything and are back at the last site of grace. This, along with the graphics, stood out as the only strong points in the game for me. While the story of Elden Ring appears to be deep, from what I can gather reading about it now, the game makes little effort to welcome newcomers. For someone making their first contact with this genre and world, it fails to entice them to stay long enough in the game to experience its full potential as it is intended by the developers. Instead, the game feels for newcomers like myself completely shallow and uninviting, especially without having previously played Dark Souls or Bloodborne. A complete void of information and direction from the intro in the early stages of the game becomes apparent. This fact is likely reflected in the Steam charts. In the first 3 months of its release, and with an all-time high a week after the game launches, the player count consistently dropped, going from almost 1 million players to 76,000 within 3 months. One game where you do not need any backstory and particularly anyone can play it, as the game guides you through the story and everything fits in when you reach certain points, is Stardew Valley. It retains not only a constant but a growing user base over time, with a storyline laid out in a way that regardless of your previous understanding of games and any type of game world, you can start it up with zero experience and the game will familiarize you with its setting without overwhelming you with what you do not know yet. Obviously, Elden Ring and Stardew Valley are not comparable games, but I'm talking about how welcoming a game can be to newcomers, where for me Elden Ring fails in that aspect completely. Now, am I saying Elden Ring is a bad game? No. Obviously, the game appeals to a huge audience and the creators did create a masterpiece here. Even more, recent numbers suggest that Elden Ring has sold around 23 million copies. Putting that into context, the best-selling game in 2023 was Hogwarts Legacy, with a total of 24 million copies sold. As a reference point, Stardew Valley sold to date around 30 million copies. Being what it is, Elden Ring seems to be a game that appeals to a huge audience of gamers, with undeniably magnificent graphics and a compelling story, from what I can tell reading up on it on the internet, as this will definitely remain a game that I will not be playing and therefore not experiencing the story in-game. For me personally, Elden Ring does not live up to the expectation, where the hype train ran me over, but the game did not deliver the experience I was hoping for. This is mainly due to the fact that Elden Ring is not very welcoming to newcomers with absolutely no prior knowledge of what is going on in this dark fantasy setting, where the realm feels more like a cosmic circus and the landscape resembles a wild mashup of genres. Above all, I feel like Elden Ring could be a great game for me as well, but without knowing what I'm doing and for what reason, I find it very uninspiring to play something that does not capture my interest early on by making an effort to lure me into its story. As said, this is my personal subjective experience about Elden Ring. Now for some reviews. I do not see the appeal to these types of games. By the way, this is not my review. 63 hours in, still haven't fought the second main boss, just exploring. This will be peak gaming for a while and hopefully will influence the gaming industry to produce better content to compete. 10 out of 10. Sad excuse for a Souls game. Most of the boss fights are you stuck in a small room with your camera clipping into walls. Damage makes no sense, play bleed or play nothing. It's a huge map with barely anything in it, just riding from one point till you hit the next boss. Elden Ring is fun, but not worth all its praise, a huge disappointment and lazy designs from the devs. Elden Ring is a game that requires the player to be familiar with the rules of its world, as with the Souls-like genre, therefore not making it appealing to gamers that are new to the game. However, the ones that do find this type of tough introduction into a game appealing or are already enticed by Souls-like games will surely find this game to be a good fit. So, should you play Elden Ring? Do you like to be thrown behind the wheel of a car with a vague description on why you are in the car, without a general sense of direction to where you need to go, and you like to play Dark Souls in your free time? If so, then Elden Ring will surely live up to your expectations. In the words of one reviewer of Elden Ring, play this game if you also enjoy getting your balls crushed by a hydraulic press. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to my channel and leaving a like or a comment. This would help me make more such videos and grow my channel. Have a wonderful day!